morning, March 7, Hindu Editorial. Back to life on the belated acquittal of death row convicts. Belated acquittal of death row convicts highlights the need to junk the death penalty. It is a tale of Kafkaesque terror. 6 members of a nomadic tribe spent 16 years in prison in Maharashtra. 3 of them were on the death row for 13 of these years, while the other 3 faced the gallows for nearly a decade. One of them was a juvenile at the time of the offense, and all this for a crime they did not commit. The only silver lining for the 6 convicts is that even though 10 years had elapsed since the Supreme Court imposed the death penalty on them, the sentence was not carried out. Hearing on their review petitions became an occasion for another bench of the Supreme Court to revisit the 2009 verdict. A 3-judge bench has now found that unreliable testimony had been used to convict the 6 men. One of the 2 eyewitnesses had identified 4 others from police files as members of the gang that had raided their hut in 2003, but these 4 were not apprehended. The gang had stolen rupees 3,000 and some ornaments, killed 5 members of the family, including a 15-year-old girl who was also raped. It is possible that the heinous nature of the crime had influenced the outcome of the case. The belief that according punishment is necessary for rendering complete justice could be behind courts brushing aside discrepancies or improvements in the evidence provided by witnesses. On a fresh hearing of the appeals, the court has concluded that the accused who were roped in as accused in this case after being found to be involved in an unrelated crime elsewhere were innocent. The case in itself holds a strong argument against the retention of the death penalty on the statute book. Had the sentence against these 6 been carried out, the truth would have been buried with them. In recent years, the Supreme Court has been limiting the scope for resorting to the death penalty by a series of judgments that recognize the rights of death row convicts. A few years ago, it ruled that review petitions in cases of death sentence should be heard in open court. In a country notorious for the law's delay, it is inevitable that the long wait on death row, either for a review hearing or for the disposal of a mercy petition, could ultimately redound to the benefit of the convicts and their death sentences altered to life terms. In a system that may say favors the affluent and the influential, the likelihood of the institutional bias against the socially and economically weak is quite high. Also, there is a perception that the way the rarest of rare cases norm is applied by various courts is arbitrary and inconsistent. The clamor for justice often becomes a call for the maximum sentence. In that sense, every death sentence throws up a moral dilemma on whether the truth has been sufficiently established. The only way out of this is the abolition of the death penalty altogether. March 7, Hindu Editorial 2. Wiggle space on SEBI's new rules. SEBI's new rules to protect those investing in liquid mutual funds are not tight enough. According to new regulations issued by the Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI, liquid mutual funds holding debt securities with a maturity term of more than 30 days will have to value these securities on a mark-to-market basis. Until now, liquid mutual funds could report the value of debt instruments with a maturity term of up to 60 days using the amortization based valuation method. Only debt securities with a maturity term of over 60 days were to be valued on a mark-to-market basis. So the new rule seemingly narrows the hope for amortization based valuation. Amortization based valuation, which is completely detached from the market price of the securities being valued, allowed mutual funds to avoid the volatility associated with mark-to-market valuation. SEBI's new rules come in the midst of the crisis in infrastructure leasing and financial services (IL and FS) that led to various fund managers reporting the value of the same debt instruments issued by the infrastructure lender at vastly different levels. The chief financial markets regulator believes that mandating mutual funds to report the value of a greater share of their holdings on a mark-to-market basis can lead to a better and more objective valuation of these securities. By exempting securities with a maturity period of up to 30 days from mark-to-market valuation, however, SEBI may be doing no favor to individual investors. This is because the new SEBI rules gives a strong incentive for liquid mutual funds to invest more of their funds under management in securities with a maturity period of fewer than 30 days. This helps avoid the volatility of mark-to-market accounting and the need to provide a fair account of the value of their investments. What is likely is a decrease in the yields received on securities maturing in 30 days or less, and an increase in the yields on debt instruments with a maturity period of 31 to 60 days. It will, however, do nothing to make investors in mutual funds become more informed about the real value of their investments. The latest SEBI rules are also in direct contrast to the usual accounting practices when it comes to the valuation of securities. Generally, accepted accounting principles mandate securities with the least maturity to be reported on a mark-to-market basis, while allowing the amortization-based method to be employed to value other securities with longer maturity periods. This makes sense as the profits and losses associated with securities with shorter terms are closer to being realized by investors when compared to longer-term securities. SEBI would do well to mandate that all investments made by liquid mutual funds should be valued on a mark-to-market basis. Simultaneously, it should work on deepening liquidity in the bond market so that bond market prices can serve as a ready reference to ascertain the value of various debt securities. Hindu editorial complete.